Welcome everyone to Textiles and Tea with the Handweavers Guild of America. I'm Kathy Group. I get to be your host today. It's good to be back. I was gone for a few weeks, but it's nice to be back. We want to thank our sponsor today. It is the Southeastern Quilt and Textile Museum. It's down here where we are in the South. It's a lovely museum. If you happen to be in the area, please go check it out. They have these amazing exhibits. And as the name says, it's not just quilt, but it's also textile. They have some really nice exhibits. And we want to thank them. How nice of them to sponsor our episode of Textiles and Tea. We're excited to have Valeria today. She is a fiber artist that's Peruvian-born, and she was an architect based in New York City. She holds a bachelor's degree in architecture from the Masters of Fine Arts and Textiles from Parsons School of Design. She's established herself as a textile sculptor who centers on weaving abilities to shape three-dimensional forms. And we'll see a lot of those today. Her work has been recognized by several prestigious awards. She was a finalist for the 2024 Dorothy Waxman Textile Design Prize, and she received the Outstanding Student Award from the Surface Design Association. And in 2024, the Koenigsberg Award from the Textile Study Group of New York. In 2024, she also is a resident artist at the School of Visual Arts. And we are so excited to have Valeria Maldonado here today. Hey, Valeria.
Hello. Hi, Kathy. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here today with you guys.
Well, good. We're excited to see your work. It's very interesting. First of all, the most important question is, what is your favorite tea?
Yeah, I laughed when I saw that question because I'm a very avid coffee drinker. But but I do enjoy the occasional, ginger tea. I think ginger, probably jasmine as well. We drink a lot of jasmine tea in Peru. So yeah, I think those two, if I have to pick tea.
Well, you can be a coffee drinker. That's fine too. How did you get started in fiber?
So, it's funny because I actually have a bachelor's in architecture. So I've always been drawn to, art and design. And when I was about to start college, I really wanted to do a bachelor's in art, you know, but at that time, that wasn't tenable in Peru. My dad didn't think that was like a career that would make me successful at that point, you know. It was hard. It was a learning curve. At the end, I ended up going to architecture, which, you know, it's a very big part of my practice now. But it would just would never fulfill the creative outlet in myself. It would never fulfill the artist in me. So years and years after I did my career and I worked in the field, I moved to the States like in 2018, and I really wanted to make something, you know, to keep going. I was restless to create art, and I needed a medium. So a friend of a friend actually taught me how to embroider.
Ah,
Yeah, and like that really sparked everything. Like I remember the first time I started like with a needle and a thread, that really like opened something. It was like a catalyst for myself, actually. I will always remember that moment. And after that, I just became obsessed with textiles. I tried a lot of different things, but in the end, weaving was what really drove me in to keep like pushing. I see weaving a lot as an architectural, you know, it's like soft architecture. Like I see the grid, you know, the warp and the weft very connected to layout, so to blueprints, you know. And I see like the line is like the thread, and the woven is a plane, and then like a basket, it could be like a model, you know, like an architectural model. So I would always find and go back and forth between these two relationships. And um yeah, I guess that's what, but that's what sparked my fiber obsession and my practice after all of that. Yeah.
well, I know that you practiced architecture for a while, right?
Yeah.
But there was also the whole issue of how you got treated
Yeah.
by the men at the architectural firm. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so I worked like 5 or 6 years in architecture, everything in Peru. I was born and raised in Lima, Peru, where I got my bachelor's from there, and I
Mhm.
started working in different firms. And you know, women, we were underpaid for making the exact same thing as the guys were doing. Our ideas weren't taken in consideration. We couldn't pitch in. We're just like, you know, making the blueprints, but not having like, you know, the design. You know, we couldn't talk about design. We couldn't talk about our ideas. I felt like it was very underwhelming, and it was very frustrating. And more than that, very frustrating, right? So I was like, you know what, I really, I don't want to keep going through this. So at first I was like, okay, I'm going to do interior design, and I did that for a while as well. But at some point, I think rather than just running from it, I was like, no, you know what, I'm going to take architecture through my lens. I'm going to understand it through fiber. uh, so that's how my practice started, as a catalyst in trying to merge the two of them. I remember I did this body of work called Feminist Cities. So it was more of like, because you know, at the end of the day, buildings are vessels for people to be in. Buildings are sculptures, right? But they're like more based in a patriarchal way, on a patriarchal design. You know, it's very rigid, and you know, it's very tall. And let's be honest, it's very phallic as well, right? So I was like, you know what? I'm going to propose a series of buildings to my utopic city. Like, what would it be if the world was made, you know, but by a matriarchal force rather than the patriarchal forces. So I started creating these different sculptures and vessels with different like textile techniques, and that just sparked a lot of what I do today. That was like more of the seed. But yeah, architecture shaped me, and it's part of my practice. So, you know, rather than running from it, I incorporate it. Yeah.
Well, we will see that today because it's architectural art, absolutely. And one of the things that I thought was interesting that you describe your work as strength with flexibility. So, what is it about that combination that resonates with you?
Yeah, I love that question, because I think like it's really the center of my practice, lies in duality. Everything I do is very dual. Strength and flexibility, they can be opposites, but they also like work together, right? So for me, it was like strength is more of like uh I see it for like a paternal force, and flexibility is like more of a maternal force. You know, it's also connected to my childhood. Like, what values would I have liked to see in you know, for upbringings? Like, a kid needs structure, but you also need to be flexible. You need to be willing to adapt. So those two values that are core in my practice, they reflect in dualities like men, women, architecture, fiber, you know, and but also in, you know, I grew up in the coast of Lima, so the water and the mountain has this relationship all the time that it's very embedded in my practice. And you'll see when you see the pieces, they look like minerals and water. So it's the same, like, you know, rock and water. So there are always these dualities
Mhm.
that are the core of my practice. So yeah, I think those two are very important, and you'll see these dualities playing with each other all along.
Well, you've talked about containers and caves and that sort of thing. Is that because your work really focuses on a variety of types of containers,
Yeah.
such as the loom, caves, huts, tents. But many of these works are containers in the sense that they may contain something, but this is not the container you're going to put some water in, right? It's not, it's going to flow out. It's not a real container, good container for that. So I
Yeah.
was curious, when you're thinking about containers, what do you want them to hold and for whom?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as I was trying to make, you know, weavings be three-dimensional, and like how textiles can hold structures, like we were talking about strength and flexibility, you know, textiles are amazing in the way they're pliable, right? They're
Mhm.
flexible, they stretch. We can do lots of things with them. They change form, but at the same time, they're not self-supportive, right? They need different structures to support themselves. So in my quest to create self-supportive textiles, I tried a lot of different things, but at the end of the day, I was left with the vessel. Like, for me, I use the vessel as a very strong symbolism in my work. Uh, yes, of course, it started from being, you know, a building that's a vessel that contains humans, but more than that, it started to be like more of a psychological vessel. At the end of the day, what I want to contain is not like physical space necessarily, but it's like nurturing society, embracing society, or making space, you know, for women in architecture, making space for fiber in fine arts, you know, making space for an immigrant woman to have a contemporary seat in Peruvian textile art. So it's personal, but it's also about communities. It's about people that are underrepresented, and how to this space that I'm actually holding inside this vessel. It's a space that I took from the world, you know. So I know you can maybe contain water or sand inside, but it is like, it's just a symbol of saying I'm making space for myself and for others, and I'm trying to nurture others, and this is what I want to bring to society, basically.
Well, Liz Adams is keeping me on my toes. What's the size of this piece?
It's around 15 centimeters tall. I'm sorry, I don't know inches that well.
Because this is kind of a bulky material. This is not fine
Yes,
thread.
this is
Okay.
a personal scale. It's around this size. It's not
Okay.
big. I have others that are human scaled, and
Right.
it's hard to see in the picture because like all of them kind of look the same. I remember once I have someone that saw one and was like, "Oh, is that the size of a pair of boots or something?" And I was like, "No, that's like the size of myself sitting down." So I think that's a very good question. This one's particularly small, like this big. I'm sorry, I suck at inches. I studied in
Somebody will pop up here in a minute and go tell us what it is. There you go.
Yeah. But yeah, this is a smaller one. Maybe you guys picked some of the ones that are huge. But yeah, this scale, my work is also like, you know, I make smaller scales, and then like there are also tests for making the big ones, you know, similarly to architecture, and you do models and then you do the
Oh, okay.
like you go back and forth, and you know, you reverse engineer again. So yeah, that's a good question.
Somebody just said it's 5.9 inches. So
Yeah.
thank you, Phyllis. We appreciate that. Um, so now that last piece, was that sprang? No.
The last piece, that's actually a tapestry woven. Yeah, that's
Okay.
tapestry weaving. But I also,
Sorry. Sorry, Mandy, I'm kind of jumping around here. The reason why is because my next question is about the different techniques that you use,
Yeah.
and that you have connected the specific type of structure, process, technique, whatever you want to call it, for particular themes, right? So, for example, you use coiling for sculptures about the womb, the coiling technique. You use spraying for if you're representing something about a tent, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So, why that connection? Why is that important?
I think what was very important around the technique and why I use a lot of different textile techniques is like the structure side. Because I needed some of have more opacity, some are more grid like more open, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always trying to mimic rock, or I'm trying to mimic water, or maybe I'm trying to make soft mountains and hard waters, you know. I'm going into this oxymoron almost, and like trying to take these dualities and play with them. So basically, you know, some containers like the womb are very, you know, very opaque and very dark. So that's what coiling serves me very well, you know, because you can make very tight spaces with almost no light that goes inside. But sprang, which is a technique that I was like really obsessed with, because you know it's ubiquitous to many cultures in the world. You know, it's from the northern region of Europe, but in Peru there's also um we know sprangs also existed there. So I'm like, and that was before, you know, communication. So how could they end up with the same technique with not knowing, you know? So that's really, that blows my mind about fiber techniques, and how, you know, it's just like I think fiber is intrinsic to human beings. Like we just know. So yeah, sprang is, you know, the stretchness of it is amazing. I use it a lot to represent water, the more open grids I want to talk about. I also use floor loom and tapestry weaving as well for more open grids. But sprang, you know, I also dip it in clay, and it creates a completely different aspect. For example, this in the right, it is sprang, but it's completely dipped in clays and other ochres to give like that kind of melting uh situation and look. And I like how they look almost like fossils, like something that has lived under the ocean for years and years, you know. So yeah, I don't know if that answered the question, but
It did, and
yeah.
then some. I
Yeah.
love it. Um, you have color in some of your works, and some of the works are more neutrals and more, you know, the color and materials. But some of these pieces are just so colorful, and I'm curious about how you choose color. Is it just, oh, I want red, this will look good, or is there a meaning behind it? Both,
Yeah,
neither.
yeah, I love this question because I think color is such an important part of my practice. So first of all, I naturally dye everything in my pieces. Like all of them are dyed by myself. I use catechu, I use madder, indigo, pea flower, marigold, cochineal from Peru, a lot of different materials that I learn through people and through communities. I have a lot of friends, very good friends from India, and they bring the catechu, you know, and I bring cochineal from home. And you know, we pick marigolds in New York City. So like a lot of the colors come from different places in my life, or people that I know in my life. And I think the color really is what gives the soul to the piece. You'll never get the same color if you just buy it. You know, I need to cook it in my own kitchen, like make the natural dyes, boil it. It's reminiscent of when I used to cook with my mother as a child. You know, it's like a ritual. It's a maternal ritual that is very important for me. So that's the way I add color even to the rope. And then most of them, if you see, each piece is monochromatic, because what I like about my work is that they're supposed to be communities, right? They're supposed to be together, to be groups or collections. I think when they shine is when they're together. Reminiscent of this city or these communities I was talking to you before about, you know, the matriarchal community. So sometimes what I do is not think about, oh, this piece specifically it needs this color or not, but like, how does this color connect to the other piece? how are they relating in color? Maybe contrasting, you know, I love this very brick clay tones, and then the teals and the deep blues and the turquoises that are like such a, you know, it's such a intoxicating combination for me. I'm very drawn to those colors, and I think I see color from nostalgia, from my childhood, really, from growing up in Peru, from what I saw, the coastlines. I lived in this brick colored house. My mother has the most beautiful teal eyes that are always keep appearing in my pieces, and just nostalgia. For most of the colors are very earthy as well, and
Mhm.
yeah, I think it's just more. There's a lot of emotion for me in terms of color.
Now, I was noticing that you've got two different fibers that you've dyed here.
Yeah.
Was there a big learning curve for you of, okay, if I use this kind of, string or thread and it dyes this way, and if I use this kind, if it's thicker, it dyes this way. Was that a learning curve for you or?
That's a great question. Yes, like all the fibers dye completely different. So sometimes you get like a very light color, or you get like a shade that like has the wrong cast. So you have to do it again. In this case, this is Cristal rope that it's pretty easy to dye actually. And the alpaca yarn is also fairly easy. So I could almost get the same shade. And in the sprung, because this is coiling, and the piece that's attached to the top is sprung, that I then dipped into bioresin. It's a bioresin that they sell locally in Brooklyn, made from algae. But I dyed that resin with clay. So like, and some madder as well. I do some concoctions. I think my work, and part of why I was a little nervous today, because I do so many unorthodox things, and I know your audience is so educated and they're wonderful weavers and fiber artists. So, and a lot of my work is it's very comes a lot for experimenting and intuition, and like failing and failing again, and that's how I learned. Even in architecture, we would learn by failing. Um, but yeah, it was a huge learning curve to recreate that color and to understand how it could communicate the same cast or the same shade, and yeah, for sure.
Okay, I have to ask you, I didn't understand. You said you did something and that you found it in Brooklyn. What was it?
Yeah, so if you see the top part of the piece, which is sprung, it's hard, it's hardened, right? Um,
Uh-huh.
so this is sprung that I've dipped into a bioresin that I buy from a local from local people in Brooklyn. So it's a resin made of algae.
Really?
Yeah, that
Oh,
makes
this is new. I'm learning something new today. I love this.
yeah,
How do you spell it?
the bioresin,
Yeah, BY, no.
BIORESEN,
Oh,
bioresin.
bioresin.
Yeah,
Okay, okay.
bioresin. Sorry, my
Ah, and
English
it's
is a little.
made from algae.
It's made from algae. Yeah. So I because
Wow. All right,
I
you guys, how many of you out there knew this? I want to see in chat. Oh,
yeah, because a big
Joan
part
already knew.
a big part of my practice was trying to use, bless you, like trying to use materials that weren't toxic, like as much as possible, right? Because I'm using sisal, I'm using alpaca, I'm using junco, I'm using reed, which is mostly natural, and then the natural materials to dye. So I was like, I don't really want to introduce plastic, you know. So for me, coming things that come from the earth have their own stories, geographical
Oh,
stories.
yeah.
I also use clay ochres from Peru as well. So like I really wanted to keep that narrative, but sometimes there's a limitation to the material. So you need to start searching for, innovation. Um, yeah.
So this natural, was that from growing up on, or was there a time in your life when you said, I really want to do more natural stuff than I do synthetic?
Um, that's a good question. I think it just like it developed when I learned to naturally dye.
Uh-huh.
And that really sparked something in me. I was like, okay, if I'm using these materials already to dye, then I'll only use natural materials, right? Because they take color so much better anyway, right? You start using silk, and you start using cotton and jute, and linen, and well, linen doesn't do very well, but you know what I mean. Alpaca takes yarn beautifully. So I was like, I'm starting this, so I'll just keep going. And in Peru, there's a this 10,000 BC tradition of textiles that it's been carrying, for ages, and they all use natural materials and natural dyes. So I think at some point in my life, everything just connected. So I knew, like, if possible, I would wanted to use like more natural materials.
Well, I wanted to do this next image I wanted to show are two different pieces side by side. And it's just a great comparison because one is somewhat structured, this kind of a teal green basket, and the other is more of a flowing, organic kind of piece. So I just love it when artists can do not necessarily left, right brain, but just the extremes, the different extremes. But I'm always curious, how do you approach the designing of it? So it's so different. How do you do that?
Yeah, I almost like not almost, like, I never sketch.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think sketching, sometimes I sketch after I've made the piece and I'm like, okay, but I think sketching from before really limits your vision, or my vision at least, because I think that's how we did it in architecture, right? Like, we draw and then you start building, and it's a great way to do it. But for me, I found it very, it will like make me very anxious of not following the exact plan, because with Fiverr, and everyone knows Fiverr does what Fiverr wants. It changes all the time. So maybe I start with a very rough vision, like, okay, I know this piece, I want it to be like human scaled, and I want it to be, more or less this technique or this. But on the way, it starts changing. Like, oh my God, that shape is changing. It's tilting. It's more structure. It's not. It's getting thinner. And that happened with the teal piece in the left that is coiling, and then I attached. I saw each reed, and then I started doing the basketry upward. And in the other hand, this is something I created a floor loom that was like human size, and I started doing the warp with rope to see what would happen, and then it became like this very, raggy type of vessel. But I think it's still conveying the same. You can see it's also like water or maybe rock, so yeah, I think I'm going to be honest, it's very intuitive as well. I think I have a lot. Sometimes I would have tried to classify them, my pieces into, wombs or huts or tents or vessels, what are they? But at the end of the day, they just keep having their own mind. And that's what I love about textiles. They tell you what to do and you just follow. And in the process, you learn more, and the shape, the form, the formal part of it just appears. So yeah, I think it's more like this.
This is so funny. I went to a workshop this weekend with Hazel Tully, if she's watching. Hey, Hazel. And she was teaching how to make baskets from pine needles. And she said that through the whole thing, you've got to listen to what the pine needles are telling you. They're going to do what they do, and you can fight them, or you can just go with the flow. So I think that's true in so much fiber, whether it's, making sculptures or weaving on a loom. At some point, you got to let the yarn do what it wants to do, the material do what it wants to do.
Yeah, I've been very encouraged to co-create with the material, right? We're creating alongside, and
Ah, I like that, co-create. Yeah.
yeah. So at first, maybe you have a very rough idea, but at the end of the day, that's what I stopped sketching, because no one was nothing was ever what's on your mind before. It's maybe it's better. Maybe it's just whatever is inside, So yeah, I think that's the beauty of fiber. And yeah, I think we have to embrace it.
Well, we were talking about the different fibers. You have thin, you've got thick. And so here's another comparison of a really bulky kind of yarn and then a thin yarn. And I love the one on the right also because of the color. We talked about color earlier, but this just has all that different color in it. So do you approach a project differently if you're using something bulkier than finer? I mean, I'm sure there's, intrinsic things you have to do different, but is your
Yeah,
mindset different?
I think um a lot of how it started was because, again, because of the structure. Coiling with ropes was very good foundation. So if you want to start, like if I wanted to start a piece that I knew was going to be bigger, coiling was a great medium to do it, so that kind became my foundation. And then when I wanted to something to be tall, to grow, to be like human size, that's when I introduced basketry, because reed is very light, and I use this reed from Peru, called junco, that I bring in my suitcase. And it's it's even lighter than common reed. So like that started to be like the body of some of the pieces. And then when I wanted to interpret flow, like more water and something more very ethereal or gossamer, I would use sprang, or I would use fleur loom weaving. So yeah, I think a lot of the times the technique I use and the material I use, from very, very thick ropes to super thin Japanese rami, it tends to be related to the structure itself, how to make my vessel to be self-supportive, because at the end of the day, textiles love to play and to fall. So like I like to defy gravity and be rebellious and be stubborn. So in these two cases, the one in the left, that's actually a waffle weaving. So that's made in a tapestry loom. And I love waffle weaving because it looks like rebars, and it looks like structure from architecture and from industrial side. So I'm very obsessed with waffles. So that's like a macro waffle. And then it's just dipped in clay, and the color is actually ochres from different places in the world. So it's also a natural
Oh,
color.
really?
Yeah. And the one in the right is very different. This is actually this is like a tapestry. I use a tapestry loom, and it's metal, so it's copper wire, and I just spray like mediums and vinegar and all sorts of things to make patina happen. Because I think copper and the patina, like, it's very
Mhm.
aesthetic, and it really talks to ocean and rust and corrosion and mineral. Um, but yeah, I think the size and the thickness of the material I use is mostly informed by structure or by opacity, because I think I love grids. Grids are very important for every fiber artist and for every architect, right? Grids are at the base of everything. But it's just how opaque or how thin, how gossamer the grid goes. So I like to push extreme. I like extremes. Obviously, I'm a very dual person, and I think I'm a Gemini. So, and I think my works tend. I think my work tends to do the same. They're always relating by contrast, right? In this case, the very, very minty green and the copper, like, one is very chunky, one is very light and open, one is metallic, one is not. So like I think they relate by contrast as well.
Do you ever find that what's going on in your life helps you determine what you're going to do? And you may just say I'm crazy, but I guess this is from being an art therapist a million years ago. It's like, if things in my life are feeling out of control, I find I want to do something I can control.
Yeah.
And if things are going pretty good, I'm much more willing to try something that, like dying. When I die, who knows what's going to happen? But if I'm feeling out of control, it doesn't feel as good. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
it does. It does. I think fire art is so therapeutic and it's so cathartic. And I honestly, like, when I started with this, it was a journey into finding myself, who I was. I wasn't
Yeah.
really, I really didn't know, like, my purpose in the world, if I had a voice or not. I felt very small being an immigrant. I was like, came from Lima to New Hampshire in a very small town at first. So I felt very isolated, and
I
and
bet.
and and I wasn't sure if my voice was going to get heard, or how I could communicate what I felt. So I think, yeah, everything around my work is around healing myself, but also healing others, and healing the odd one, you know, and trying to embrace. A lot of them, the containers also come from nurturing, from mothering society, from making space for others, for people that maybe are unheard. So yeah,
Mm.
I'm not sure if that was the question, but yeah, sometimes there's a lot of of control, and there's a lot of, I guess, in my life I try to control things, but not in my art. I think that's the only realm where I really try to be like, you know, nothing's going to go as planned. Everything's changing. Like even dying, like the smallest thing, you know, your bat is not blue, now it's green. So now you have a green bat, and like, you know, that's great. Now you need to work with that. And then, you know, the basket tilts and it changes. And I think that's the only aspect in my life that like helps me heal from that extreme control, and just let go, and I'm trying to pour from inside. And I think my pieces talk about that, and talk about my my experience as a human being at the end of the day.
Well, this next question kind of sort of relates to what we're talking about. And these two pieces show how you do balance. And I just loved this because these works are kind of on the edge. They look like they could just fall over, but
Mhm.
they're not going to. They're very secure, especially the one on the left. I mean, it really looks
Yeah.
like it could go over. So is this some of what you were talking about, this balance that you put into your work?
Yeah, they're a balancing act for sure. I think for me it was super important, and it still is, for them to support themselves by themselves, right? If they need to have some sort of metal thing or wooden, for me that was a failure. That's just myself, and that's just the rules I put for myself, because you know, I'm trying to merge architecture and fiber. So I was like, okay, how can they collide, you know? And basketry, of course, is an answer, you know, but basketry has its limitations in terms of size sometimes, you know, or in terms of how tall you can get. So I think the foundation was important, as I was telling you before. Like the coiling is very important, because it like starts with something that you can is more tangible, and it's more grounded. So when you start with that, I just kept like attaching each reed to the coiling, and then start weaving, you know, and doing this twining effect. And then, you know, at some point, yeah, maybe if you put too much weight on the other side, it will fall, right? So
Mhm.
it is like trying to understand, like, okay, what does it want to be like? How much do I need to put, or give or take, so it like stands by itself and its own presence? So yeah, I think balancing has been definitely a part of my practice, and they're still holding up great. So um yeah, I think that's an interesting part as well.
Well, this conversation has been very philosophical, which I love, and I hope people are enjoying this. But
Yeah.
I loved it when I went to your website. You have a manifesto. I mean, how
Yeah.
many people have a manifesto? I thought that was so cool. I encourage you all, go to the website and go read it. It really got me thinking. So tell me, why did you do a manifesto?
I just think, you know, not always in your life you're giving a position to talk or to speak your ideas. And I think if you have a seat on the table at some point, at any table, you need to be prepared to talk your philosophy, and you need to be prepared to know what you're going to give to the world. And you know, we only have one existence, and we need to use it, and to talk about what we stand for. And I think my art is so personal to me. It's everything I've been through, like being a woman, being an architect, having suffered patriarchy in architecture, and then being a fiber artist, and being an immigrant, and being, you know, all of my experience have shaped who I am today, and what I stand for. And I think when I sometimes, and it's completely okay if people see my pieces and put their own emotions or their own ideas into it, because that's what art is for anyways, right? It's to
Mhm.
catalyst an idea, to make people feel any emotion. It can be good, bad, happy, angry, sad, maybe they feel contained, maybe they feel enraged. I don't know, but like, you know, it's to shake people. And I just made that to talk about my philosophy about creating and about making, and about being an artist.
Well, two of the statements that I loved, and everybody who's watched this show very much so knows that I'm always saying, I want to put that on a banner, or I want to put that, I want to, embroider that on something and put it up there above my loom. But there were two statements that I loved, and one is be true to your hands, and the other one is just make. And they're so simple, but they're so powerful for someone who wants to make. And for like me, I get caught up in everything else. And those just seem to like clarify. I love that. Be true to your hands. Can you talk about those two?
Yeah, I feel they all come from this matriarchal force in me, and to trying to understand the world right now, like just seem to destruct, like destruction and tearing apart seems to be what we see every time, everywhere. And I think we have to channelize this feminine energy of creating, of
Mm.
making, of mending, of making things work. We're here in this world, we're put to create, not to destroy, to make. So make is also like in the material way, in the sense of start weaving, like make whatever, embroider, just express yourself, utilize, you use Fiverr for yourself to talk about your ideas, to express to the world, to have your place at, your seat at the table. But it's also about the energy of making, of creating society, and of creating communities, of embracing each other, nurturing each other. I think make is both ways, and stay true to your hands is, there's a lot of fear of failure or just not being good
Oh,
enough. But I think if you just embrace your hands and like your own experience as a human being, what you have lived, everything that shaped you, that's enough to make a compelling piece, or something that it's worth, for me it's worth it. So it's worth it. I just think people should make, create. Yeah.
I think those are great. Those are wonderful statements. So what's next for you?
Yeah, I'm actually moving in a couple of weeks to Brooklyn, so I have like a bigger space
Oh,
studio
good for you.
very
Good for you.
excited about. And yeah, I've been thinking a lot about, liminal space lately, and being in between, and, immigration and diaspora, and being transplanted. So I think I mean, and I did an residency in SVA where I, like, talked a lot about this idea. So I'm thinking about creating a new body of work. Of course, with my initial concept was just adding these new things, and just trying to keep pushing my work in New York City, showing. It's a hassle to be an artist. So yeah, just keep going. And if even if it changes something, like even if one person sees it and it touches something for them, or makes them feel better,
Mhm.
or makes them feel heard, that's worth it for me. Again, I'm very lucky to have a voice, because not everyone gets a voice. So yeah, I'm grateful.
Well, one thing you've done is in having your voice is you did a book. Um, and gentle structures, making space through textile. And talk about the title. What do you mean, gentle structures?
Yeah, so gentle structures again is this marriage, like, around architecture and fiber, right? It's like it's around strength and flexibility again. It's how to structure, but in a soft way. Soft architecture again is soft vesseling, is soft embracement. So again, I think it really portrays that duality of the concepts I've been talking about, of the vessel. um yeah, I think that title stemmed from that. And making space through textiles is both making space literally, because they're vessels, so they're holding space, like we talked about. But
Mhm.
it's also making space in the world for myself and for others. It's making space in architecture for females. It's making space in fine arts for females. Is making space for Peruvian contemporary arts in the contemporary art world. So like it's making space in different capacities. It's physical, but it's also conceptual, and I feel like that's what's amazing about fiber, that the medium itself talks about about the concepts, you know, there it's pliable, it's bendable, but it also holds its shape. And you know, the volumes always seem like they're melting or tilted, but they're strong in their point of view, but they're always willing to change. And I think that's also you know, that's similar to our human experience.
Well, I encourage people to take a look at the book. It's on your website, right?
Yeah, it is. You
Take a
can,
look at
yeah,
that.
please go. It would be amazing for you to take a look. Yeah, I would love.
Well, we've got some questions. Let's go to those.
Sure.
This question, I wish I had asked it. It was a brilliant question. Thank you, Betsy. She asked this, what took you from Lima, Peru, to New Hampshire? How did you make that? I mean, there's so many places to go in the United States. Nothing
I
wrong with New
know.
Hampshire, but why New Hampshire?
Yeah, well, actually my husband went to school in New Hampshire, so
Oh, there you go. I knew there would be a connection somewhere.
yeah, that's why we decided to. At first, it was just we are just going to stay like 1 or 2 years, but then you know the pandemic happened, and then
Oh,
you know we just stayed there. And then I was like, you know what, I really want to move to the city. I think I can make something for myself. I really want to pursue my artistic practice, so just let's do it. And yeah, we've been here since. So yeah, that's why. But it was, you know, it was a learning curve, but it gave me so much as well. You know, I met people that, you know, work with sheeps, alpacas. I got fiber from them. I feel like every experience you have, good and bad, like really shapes your artistic practice. So I don't think I would be myself if I wouldn't have been there, you know, and learning from a culture that was so different from myself at that point. But to be flexible and adapt is also important.
well, so many fiber artists. I mean, that's top of their list to go to Peru because
Yeah.
it's such a fiber place. You know, there's so many different fibers to see and traditions and that sort of thing. So, um, okay, this question, I'm not real sure I understand this. Oh, it's from Rama. I think I'm pronouncing your name right. Please talk a bit about the two-dimensional loom structure for tapestry. How how you relate that to architecture and 3D objects. Um, this is something I consider often. Did that question make sense?
So you mean about my tapestry looms? How did I ended up doing that? Or
I'm not real sure. Go ahead and answer it that way.
yeah,
And Rama, fill in if we're not getting the question.
so I also do floor loom weaving, but as we know, floor loom weaving doesn't take a warp that's thick, right? So it
Yeah,
has
right.
limitations, and also a lot of limitations in width. So I wanted something wide. So that's how I started making these big, very big frames and just warping like around with rope. So that's the material was what actually led me to change my you know my tool.
Uh-huh.
So then I started, you know, plain weave and then twill, you know, and then started doing waffle weaving. That's something you can actually do on a tapestry weave as well. It takes a lot, but you can do it as well, you know. And then like I, you know, that was flat, but I wanted three-dimensionality, so I started like, you know, bending those and understanding how they could be vessels, and then, you know, maybe dipping it in some sort of medium or not, or maybe they just stand up by themselves because the rope is so chunky. So it was actually like, again, a learning curve and exploration and a lot of failure, a lot of failure. I had a lot of pieces that never went anywhere, but at the end of the day, like I understood, I get bored very easily, so I needed a lot of techniques, you know. It's just like, okay, this is amazing, I love the tapestry, but now I want sprung. Like what does this do? How can I incorporate this? And then coiling, this is so amazing, but I want to coil with rope, you know. So I guess I'm not sure if this explains specifically the question, but how it relates to architecture. I feel in grid, you know, in warp and weft, you know, that grid is the same as we were talking about, you know, building layouts and structures. It is exactly the same thing. And then, for example, nowadays it's very ubiquitous to see 3D printing, right, with plastic. And I
Mhm.
actually think coiling is low-tech 3D printing.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
exactly this, you know, it's the same motion of like layering on top
Uh-huh.
a line. So it's really the same. So that also came into idea like, oh, you know, instead of 3D printing that it was available at that time, I was like, I'm going to coil. And you know, those parallels I think appear all the time in my work. Or maybe it's just because I'm looking at that at them with my point of view. Maybe for others it won't make sense, but it did for me. And
Yeah, yeah. Somebody asked, because you started out with embroidery, do you use any embroidery in your project? That's from Margaret. Are possibly going to add that in the horizon? Or is that coming up on the horizon?
at first I would do some embroidery, you know, when I was doing more of a flat landscapes. I have like earlier works that are like macro embroideries. At some point like that just stopped. You know, there were other techniques that started serving me a little better, but you never know, sometimes you could incorporate it in a you know, in a sculpture. I don't like to close doors at all because like I like to keep exploring, and I'm sure there's a lot of different techniques I don't know now. Maybe I will fall in love, you know. So who knows? Yeah, but embroidery is just amazing, and I feel it's so rebellious because you know there's this domesticity that was linked to this, and you know, all the years of oppression and we have faced as women, and I think embroidery is just like there's a lot of power in that for me. So I'm in awe of how empowering fiber art really is in all its techniques.
Well, Jenny Hurd wants to know, did you incorporate any of the ancient Peruvian weaving techniques into your art?
That's a great question. I think the only one that I incorporate is sprung. At some point, I learned how to do backstrap weaving, but honestly, it's very complicated. I do have a backstrap loom at home. I try sometimes, but I haven't gotten to the point where I feel comfortable making a huge piece. But that's a great question because that's something I really want to try. That's something I want to push for my culture.
Mhm.
um yeah, and a lot of what I use is more in terms of, you know, alpaca from Peru, junco, or the dyes I bring from home. But yeah, definitely I would like to incorporate a little more technique in my sculptures. Yeah.
Now, I saw in your bio that you teach, right?
I did some you know, workshops from you know, Math Museum, and I've also taught in Loop of the Loom as well. So I've been teaching now and there, but that's not what I do full time right now. But yeah, sometimes.
The reason I asked, because I know there's people going, I wonder if she'll come to my guild and teach. And I didn't know if that's something that you want to
Oh,
do.
of course, yes.
Okay.
Please, by any means, I would love to. Like, you know, again, my techniques are very unorthodox sometimes, and I know a little bit about a lot of things, but you know, sometimes people want to do, you know, tapestry weaving workshops we've done, or dyeing workshops, you know, or you know, little baskets. And yeah, by all means, I think, you know, textiles need to be shared, fiber needs to be shared. Otherwise, this knowledge we have right now will die for the new generations. You know, we need to carry this through for everyone, and fiber is for everyone. So yeah, by all means, I would love to be involved in any workshops that you might think.
When we were talking about, history and generations and that sort of thing, I'm going to read to you. This is one of the chats. This is from Claudia. She said, Valerie knows herself and can express it so eloquently. I'm 71 and I'm still trying to know myself so well. I get it, Claudia. I am there with you. It's like, I need to put that saying up,
Thank you
just
so much.
make. And
That's so kind.
so thank you, Claudia. That's a wonderful statement. Um, so I'm so excited that you were here today. I think you gave us all so much to think about when it comes to fiber and creativity. And as you can see, you're getting all kinds of hearts and applauses and everything. So thank you so much for being here today. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Really, this was amazing. I enjoyed it a lot. And yeah, I hope our viewers enjoyed it as well. And yeah, please feel free to reach me, DM me, email me. I will be happy to collaborate, to do workshops or whatever you think. Yeah, thank you so much for giving me this space again.
Oh, you were wonderful. And I encourage you all to go to our website. If nothing else, I know I'm obsessing about this, but that manifesto just got me thinking that maybe, you know, that's Claudia, maybe that's what we need to do. We need to put it down on paper and make a manifesto. But I encourage you to look at it and look more at her artwork. Wonderful website. So check that out at valeriamaldonado.com. Valeria, I keep calling you Valerie. Valeria
It's okay.
Maldonado, beautiful name. So thank you so much for being here. We do also want to thank our sponsor, Southeastern Quilt and Textile Museum. Again, go check out their website. They have some wonderful exhibits, great topics. And we're so excited that they're supporting Textiles and Tea. If you would like to support Textiles and Tea by being a sponsor, y'all take a look at what we've got coming. We've got some incredible people. Bonnie, anyway, we've got Laura Fry. We've got some wonderful people who are going to be on and talking, and some of them don't have sponsors yet. So if you would like to sponsor an episode or your guild or your business, please go online and you can pick the date and purchase it. If you have any questions, please call the office. We'll be glad to help you with anything about that. So if you're thinking about being sponsors, we've got some great episodes coming up. So check it out. We also want to thank, oh, guess what's coming up? Spinning and Weaving Week. This year, we've had people say, please bring back Art Sparks, and we sure are. We've got over 33 Art Sparks classes right now, and I think we're still taking suggestions. So if you're thinking about it, jump on it. We also have thread talks, and those have been so interesting just to hear what people have to say. And we're looking for people who want to come on thread talks. It's about 12 minutes or so where you can share an idea, a thought, a concept, something that you want to say about fiber. So think about it. If you would like to join us on Thread Talks, please do that. But Spinning and Weaving Week will be October the 6th through the 12th, 2025. You'll be able to sign up on July 1st. It will open for registration. And it's an amazing week of just learning and information. And oh, the tours, we have the best tours. So check it out. We're excited that's coming up. We want to thank everybody who's been a member or donates. When you join or you give a donation, that keeps things like Textiles and Tea going, Spinning and Weaving Week. Those are the way that we keep those programs running. And we thank everybody for joining. If you haven't joined yet, please consider it. Convergence is coming up, so your membership will be important for that. So if you're interested, just go online to weavespindye.org and you too can join or donate or both, and we would appreciate it. That if you've missed any episodes, just a reminder, you can watch them on Facebook. You can go back and watch any episode of Facebook that you want. You can get to them from the website. The archived episodes are done by alphabet. So if the person's name, you can just look them up. So check that out. You can also watch them on YouTube, and you can register to be so that whenever a new episode is uploaded, you'll get a notice saying that a new episode of Textiles and Tea has been uploaded. So we're so excited. We thank you so much for joining us today. Next week, we have a young artist named Lacey Blackwell. She has some interesting work, and I encourage you all to join us next week. It's so nice to be back. I do want to thank Erica for covering for me while I was gone. And also, I'm blanking out your name, dear. I'm so sorry. But I want to thank you for sponsoring, covering for us. I'm going to be gone from time to time. So if you're thinking that you would like to try being us coming in and asking questions, it's so much fun. I encourage you to do that. So thank you all for covering for me while I'm gone. Hope you have a wonderful week, and we will see you next week. Textiles and Tea. Happy tea.